explorations are really helpful when you're trying to understand where people go from one place to another. If you're looking at something like, as they show here, segment overlap, path explorations are really helpful. The thing is that this can be a little complicated as you're trying to figure out what it is you're actually wanting to look at and understand. And then how do you manipulate the different pieces and parts to show you what you need to uncover? What I'm going to show you now is just a little teaser to give you an idea of the possibilities. It will be up to you to dig in a little bit deeper based on your project assignment to understand things a little bit further. So we're still focused on that question of what parts of the experience might be frustrating or problematic for users. And one way to do that is to look at how people move through your store. Look at the path that they take. In this particular case, we'll take a look at path exploration. Now, what you'll see as this begins to load is you see on the left-hand side, we have a whole set of variables and tab settings that we can look at. We can identify our time frame that we want to look at. We can identify the segments that we want to look at and think about, so what we want to show up in our path exploration. We can also identify our dimensions, anything that Google is tracking. We can also look at metrics. We have a set of things that we can do. So we know we're starting with path exploration. The first question we have is, again, as always, what is our date range? What do we want to look at? Do we want to look at what happened yesterday and just look at something very simple to see the amount of people that were on the site and what actions they took? So if we really want to get down to the nitty-gritty and look at something small, we can say, all right, here's a path exploration for all users from yesterday. And what we can see in the way this is set up is we can see that we had 5.6 thousand events that occurred. So session start is an event. And we can see from that funnel, a group of them, 3,000, went to the page view. And we can see that 2,100 went somewhere else. And you can click the plus 10 more to see how that sugars out. One of the things that you'll notice is we're looking at event names. Maybe it might be easier to look at page title. I think page title makes a lot more sense because then I can see from the session start, we had 327 who went right to the online store. We had 2,709 who were at the home. And we can see that the Google merchandise store, there were some events, and then we can see there's a specific product individual users looked at. And then we can drill down further to see where are people going and how many of them in one day. You get this nice small little snapshot. Let's take a look at what happened to the people who went to the online store. We had that mysterious not set. And then we see people went back to the home page. We see there was socks, some other things that happened here. What are we not seeing? I don't know about you. But what am I not seeing? I'm not actually seeing any of those people making it to the shopping cart. Interesting. Let's take a look and see what the journey was for the folks who went from home and then they went to the sale. I'm still not seeing anywhere people ended up in a shopping cart. We can see all the different pages people went to and what they looked at. And there we go. We finally have a shopping cart. So we can see this path came from over here from the sale. So what are we looking at now? Remember, we're asking the question, what parts of the experience might be frustrating or problematic for users? As we look at this path, we begin to see people come from home. If they click on sale, 94 people clicked on sale, and that brought them, meandering around, and 2 people made it to the shopping cart. And then the shopping cart brought people back to the home. and back to the login for the Google Merchandise Store. Interesting. We'd love to see more people getting to that shopping cart, wouldn't we? What is it that might bring people to that shopping cart? You can see that, the not set is an area that doesn't give us much data. And we can keep on clicking and looking and seeing and exploring and following this path to see, where did people go? What did they look at? You can then segment this out and say, hey, let's just look at our US traffic. And then suddenly we have a little bit more. We have less numbers. We can get to see where people went from the US. We can get rid of that segment, and we can say, well, let's look at what happened paid traffic. So paid traffic came in. We had 435 people come through paid. Based on the settings we had before, it's a little hard to see, but we're not seeing where anybody actually made a sale. Always good to look a little bit further. Now we've got our little Google bot there. And you can keep expanding this to see exactly where people went and what actions they took based on maybe the ads that they saw. You can always look at this in the screen class if you wanted to. So if you wanted to see, right, the name and then the kind of screens that they had and they were using, Google Merchandise Store. So the more information you can pull out that helps you understand what you're looking at, the better. We come out of paid traffic, right? We can add tablet traffic, US, direct only, right? So we have some options here to look at. We can get into even further by looking at filtering. We can filter by country, by device, by specific metrics. And we can do comparison data if we want. So the key here is being able to play around with all of these pieces and parts to see if they can help you paint a picture of the actions that people are taking on the website. How does this help us understand what might be frustrating or problematic for users? Well, if you see a high abandonment rate, if you see people are coming to the homepage and keep coming back to the homepage, that's usually an indicator that there's some navigational challenges because people can't find their way. If you're trying to understand more about, okay, what are they searching for, or did a coupon work, or did this sale piece work, what's happening, making sure that your events are set up correctly so that you can look at those things. And you can say, well, I'm looking at that event name, and I want to see maybe there was, let's put the event name back, and I'm looking at page view, view item list, let's look further. Right? Was there something else that happened? We had 117 new engaged users. We had people from San Francisco. So you can see how different ways about how the event is set up will help to understand if things worked well. Predicted top spenders, and they went for a page view. View item list, view item. But did anybody buy anything? And we then go to another page view. And then it goes view item list. And we can watch what happens with this one user who's popping around. Scroll. We can see that something's missing. And if you think about the conversion information we looked at earlier, what we want to be seeing is a faster path to conversion. What is it that people are trying to buy, and how is their experience? So this kind of path exploration can be really helpful. Funnel exploration can also be helpful. And I'm going to let you explore that on your own. Very simply, you come here to explore. You can click funnel exploration. You can also just stay in this same window. And at any time, you can say you want to do a segment overlap, and then you identify your segments. You can look at a user lifetime. And you can ask for a visualization of a table if you want. You can add additional segments, and it'll tell you if there's data or not. And we want another segment comparison, and I want to look at US paid traffic. We have pivot tables that we can put in here. Quite a bit of information. We can also look at freeform, and you can create your own and decide how you want to set this up to provide you with the information that you need to know. Right, we get little tables and we can see our active users, remembering that we're only in about a month mark here. And we can look at our US active users versus our paid active users. And then we can look at that over time. We could add a donut chart if we wanted. And you can create some interesting visualizations depending on the kind of segmentation or the dimensions that you want to look at. You could even use gender in here if you wanted. You can see some of these are not working. I'm just giving you some examples of different things that you can look at. These are the ways in which you can kind of parse out the data based on what you want to try to understand. Know that there's no simple, quick, easy fix. You do have to kind of play around with it to get a handle on it. So with that, I encourage you to get in here, try all these different explorations, look at cohort exploration to understand how US active users work. Make sure you have enough time frame set up so that you can actually see some data. Don't hesitate to try different segment comparisons. And if it doesn't return any data, that doesn't necessarily mean you did anything wrong. It just means there may not be information that tells you about active users based on what they're doing. And you might have to, of course, add a little bit more information into any of these. You might want to go monthly on your cohort granularity and then what your calculations are. You can see you can get pretty robust in this. So spend some time, play around. You have a term to get to more comfortable with this. Apply what you're learning as you go. And remember that the key in answering some of these questions may not actually be in Google Analytics.